Delia Lake in the US. What can we do as groups to push technology transfer? This really is proving to be one of the sticking points in the negotiations, as I understand it, technology transfer. Any suggestions appreciated?
Boy, that's a more difficult one. The technology transfer stuff really, has been a big focus of this meeting, and as frankly the U.S. has been, once again, sort of a real stumbling block in the negotiations on this issue. Technology transfer is about money. It's about assisting developed countries in making investments in clean and green technology in the developing world. So, what the United States and what some companies are afraid of is if we take this new technology and we give it to China, that the Chinese will copy the technology and therefore will violate intellectual property rights for what may be, relatively new technology. The fact is this is an urgent problem. We can't afford to have the developing world make the same kind of mistakes that we made on our development path. And unless the United States and other developed countries are willing to move this technology into the developing world, we're not going to get there. So I think we need to find creative ways to make sure that, on the one hand, we can, incentivize people to come up with the kinds of technologies that we're going to need to solve this problem, while on the other hand, making sure that we can, rapidly deploy that technology where it's needed and where it can make a difference. So how can an individual or groups in the U.S., I don't have a great answer for a way to do this, again, beyond engaging your elected officials. The work that we're doing in the field, as part of Greenpeace in the U.S., in the congressional districts where we're focused, is we are making sure we follow our, targeted members of Congress everywhere. They hear from us constantly and unendingly on this issue. And we make sure that everywhere we go, and every meeting that they have, and every radio show that they're on, that they are hearing from us, that they're forced to answer the question, how are they going to solve this problem? I think as a citizen of the United States, that is one of the most effective things that we can all do.
I might say we did ask the delegation if they'd send someone, and we've had no so far.
There's a shocker.
I was going to ask you one more, and now I've lost the question. Yes, I was going to ask you, sorry. This is Chris Miller of Greenpeace US. When you talk about technology transfer, what do you say to people, or what do you say to Americans? Let's be specific about it. You say, hey, these guys are begging, they want our technology. Why should we give it to them? What is the debate about? It's not simply, presumably, handing over something you've got to people who haven't got it. What's the issue there?
The issue that the United States is most concerned about, and that they talk about in these forums, is this issue of intellectual property. That as American companies develop newer technology, whether it's carbon capture and storage, or frankly, technology that would seem to me as simple as a wind turbine, is very proprietary technology. The materials that are used, the designs of these products are, private companies develop these things, and they're very concerned that in the process of moving this technology to the developing world, that it will be copied, and that is their concern. But again, the problem that we're talking about is urgent. And if we lose this fight, we're talking about a radically different planet that our children and grandchildren will inherit. It is the single most important issue that we face. And so policymakers got to figure out how to make this happen. And this is not rocket science. I think the tools, the mechanisms, the policies can be put in place that ensure that companies are incentivized for helping solve this problem, while at the same time making sure that the developing countries don't make the same kinds of mistakes that we made in our development. And so, I think what is at the heart of the issue here is the administration going to bat for big business in the U.S., and that's not how we're going to solve this problem. We need a change in that thinking.
I guess also it's not that developing countries just want any old technology. We're asking them to change their development path so as not to repeat the mistake of making these huge emissions that we in the West have done. So if we're asking them not to go ahead and develop and make those emissions, we should help them with pay for a new technology which they can ill afford. I suppose that's what's partly behind it.
If the Chinese population emitted per capita what a citizen of the United States, I mean, this game is over. I mean, by a long shot. And so it's in all of our interests. This is not just about the developing world. This is about our way of life as well. And so, if we can't all get in a room, as they're attempting to do here in Bali, and figure out how we solve this, we're in big trouble. And so, I'm optimistic that ultimately we're going to get this done, but I think it's very difficult with the current administration to convince particularly the developing world that they ought to do anything other than take the cheapest, dirtiest development path, because it's the easiest thing to do to help lift their populations out of poverty. And I think, as I said before, until the United States really steps up and begins to do its part, this problem doesn't get solved.
And realistically, that's not going to happen under this administration or at these negotiations. It will need a change of leadership.
It will, but what my hope is that before we leave here on Saturday, that what we will have here is a framework that will allow over the next 2 years this process to be developed. I think most countries are here working, trying to put together a package that has a 2-year time span that will move us towards the second commitment period of the Kyoto Protocol, that will have all of the 4 important elements that is required here, mitigation, adaptation, technology, and finance. It has something for the developed world, something for the developing world, and, in many ways is sort of a complicated puzzle, and you got to get all the pieces together before everybody holds hands and moves forward. So I think if the process is set out, if the process is agreed to here, that 2-year time span for the process allows for a new administration in the United States to come in, to enter the process, and to join the world in moving forward. I think that's how we see, that's how we really see us moving forward here. You're right. The next year is a challenge, and we know that not much will happen. But if we can leave Bali with a clear roadmap for a set of negotiations that has a clear end date, and ideally speaking, we would like to see some additional elements. We'd like to have, some content in addition to the process. But if the United States, ensures that there is not content in this decision, as long as we have that process with the end date, we can at least leave here knowing that before the end of this process, there will be a change of government in the U.S. And I think, whether it's Senator Obama, Senator Clinton, or even a Republican, I think it is inevitable that we will see hard caps on emissions in the United States. Congressman Markey talked about the 20-some-odd businesses that are in the U.S. Climate Action Partnership, major Fortune 500 companies. Increasingly, multinational companies, U.S. companies, are feeling locked out of a growing, carbon market, a growing global carbon market. They want to be a part of it. And so I do think that regardless of who is elected, this is inevitable. And I do think, we get the process here, hopefully with some content. If we can't, the United States blocks it, we get the process, and we move forward to Poland next year and on to Copenhagen. And my expectation is we leave Copenhagen with a real step forward for the world. I mean, I think that's the hope.